Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna. Here basically we are discussing about the banking investment basically. That is the software industry basically. They have invested lots of money to the banking to the software industry. So that is the topic basically. So one person told that banks basically has invested lots of money to the software, right? Basically. That basically in the form of text box. That's basically user controls. That is the person who was not basically of the IT industry, they can say as a user control equal to text box, radio buttons, which you basically see in the web browser basically. So that basically contains thousand settings creation. How basically? Because when the power supply comes to the computer basically, that time the power supply basically are taken from the more than thousand cities basically. So you can take here as an example of 5,000 cities or 10,000, 20,000 cities. In that basically the computer special power supply are basically passed. That basically it's generated by the nuclear power company basically. They basically passes the data to the each and every power supply companies basically of each country. So one country basically gets one data basically. And they basically passes the data to the entire cities. So if we say in India basically I will take one example, Bangalore city basically gets the data of each and every computer, or basically you can say each and every software companies or each and every city's data of particular computers basically. So each and every computer basically have IP address, right? Basically, so they basically have up to that level data basically. The software, the power company basically, they are going to pass the data to each and every computers basically up to that level basically. The power supply basically they have. So the power supply means how they basically don't know that this particular person is going to purchase this laptop, that laptop, this laptop. They basically have HP data. They have basically the Dell data. They basically have the compact data. They basically have the each and every computer's company's data basically, and each and every computer basically company basically have basically their physical locations basically. For example, if I say that computer basically is there, they basically are created by the 55 countries, sorry, 55 cities. So they basically are preparing their each and every computers, hardware, software, whatever thing basically on the base of that 55 cities only basically. So here that basically is the investment basically. So here basically that is the base investment, right? Now the main investment basically which each and every SAP, Oracle, ASP.NET, that is the Microsoft basically, .NET, PHP, SAP, Python, PHP. This whole group basically shares the particular data basically, that basically is given as a name as a user control basically. For that basically company, this is a data basically. So Microsoft basically gets data of user controls. So for that basically they have to pay certain level of money, and few money basically like Microsoft basically. So Microsoft basically pay the tax amount, but it's a SAP company. So basically he basically is connected with some king's family basically. So he basically pays certain level of money basically, but that is not forming the tax basically, because king group basically never pay the tax. King group basically never pay the tax to the government. They basically certain pay the certain level of money amount basically. So here one of the person told that, so the tax amount, money amount basically are paid by, for example, in SAP basically around just rough amount basically, rough number basically I'm taking 1 crore project is ongoing, right? In 1 crore basically, in one project basically, at least basically thousand thousand text box basically might be used. So for this thousand basically thousand multiplied by 1 crore, that comes to around 100 crore, more than 100 crore data basically. Here basically I just taken as a rough number. So 1,000 crore is also rough data basically. So 1,000 crore text box is getting displayed in the SAP web-based project basically. So for that SAP web-based project basically he is paying the certain level of money. If he will stop the money, his text box will not get displayed. If you want to check this, you can check this, but it's a global basically. Global means especially for SAP basically they have not created 55 cities. For Microsoft, especially user text box, basically they have not created 100 cities. It's a global basically for each and every company basically. So for all companies basically, sorry, basically all companies basically, one text box is a common basically. Sometimes basically it might possible they do the customization through parameters that for Microsoft basically pass these parameters, for SAP basically pass these parameters. So whenever basically Microsoft SDK basically is going to install basically that time basically they are going to get that text box. So this is basically a huge investment basically. It's a huge investment basically to create one city. 50 lakh crore basically are used basically. So these all are investment basically. So I will take one example basically. India city, right? Sorry, India country. It's not city. India country basically is India's country is basically getting the tax amount from, assume that basically from 1 crore businessman basically of the computer basically they are getting some certain level of money, right? So here basically the government pays the money to the tax group basically. So because India is also basically paying the tax amount so that the India can be secure. So here basically I'm not going to up to that level basically how basically India is getting secure, how basically India is secure. That basically I'm not talking about. So here the topic is 1 crore basically is the software company owner. They are paying money to the. So here I'm just categorizing the businessman. So it's a software businessman. So 1 crore software businessman basically are paying the money to the India government. So Indian government basically central, that is basically currently it's BJP. So BJP basically is paying the money to the other side basically. Where basically that BJP also might not be knowing. It might possible that basically BJP might be paying to the Congress, and Congress basically is the first party of the India. So they might be paying the money to the other side, but they are paying where basically that they also might not be knowing basically. So here basically assume that basically they are paying some money to certain level of country, and they basically gets the money, and they basically do the investment of, for example, 1 crore businessman basically of the software industry paid around 1,000 crore. So they basically do the investment according to this 1,000 crore basically. So this 1,000 crore basically is the money basically which has been received by the Indian government to the software industry basically. Sorry, for the software industry, so that basically the Indian government basically can pay that 1,000 crore. So they are not basically only paying the 10 crore basically. 2 0 basically they are not removing basically. So they are basically paying the 1,000 crore. So here the thing is basically, so the company employees basically that are the 1 crore software company owner basically, they can basically ask basically where basically our money basically is going basically to the Indian government basically. Same way basically the Microsoft basically can ask to the US government basically, where basically my money is going basically. I want to know basically exact location of this text box basically. If they don't say basically that this is the location, that is the location, because he is paying the tax amount. So tax detail basically he can ask basically because he have a permission basically. Because in future basically if the Microsoft basically will not able to display the text box basically, then what he's going to do basically. But this type of thing basically never happens. Otherwise basically it will be the reputation of American government basically. Sorry, the American country basically, that basically they might face problem basically, because America is number one country. If basically by chance Microsoft basically is not getting display his text box in the web browser basically, so that is going to affect to the American basically, and lots of uh, Prime Minister basically, the Narendra Damodar Modi, he's a friend of America basically, so that will affect to the Indian government also. So it's a huge basically reputation basically. So that's why basically they will, the Microsoft basically always gets the text box control basically in his .NET, in his ASP, in his VB basically. Sorry, basically it's, I'm just talking about the web browser basically. So in web browser basically he's going to get the entire text box, that is 100% sure basically. So here the thing is basically the bank basically are investing the money of 1,000 crore basically. So banks basically gets from where basically, because Indian government basically are paying money where basically. Assume that basically they got some account number. They are basically not going the taking the suitcase and taking the 1,000 crore in suitcase and take it, telling that basically take this money and don't give basically earthquakes. don't give tsunami, don't give basically highest flood, don't give basically air tsunami, don't give tufan. So like this, basically they are not taking this. So they are basically paying the tax amount. So in software industry, basically tax amount means don't basically give the virus, don't basically take my data, don't basically attack to the computers, don't attack to the banks, don't attack to the stock exchange, Mumbai Stock Exchange, don't attack to the insurance company, don't attack to the each and every individual account number, don't attack to the temple trustee bank accounts, don't attack to the businessmen of the Indian businessmen, don't attack to the SIM cards basically owners basically sorry the database of the SIM card basically because each and every SIM card basically which you are using that is also basically in the one database basically and that is basically in India. So it's India is basically handling that SIM card basically. So they are so everything basically comes into the picture and they are paying some amount that basically 1,000 crore. So that 1,000 crore basically Indian governments are taking and they are paying 1,000 crore. Basically they are not paying 10 crore or 1 crore basically removing some three zeros and like this basically they are not paying. So that's why basically how much money exactly the Indian government is paying to the other side that is the bank account number otherwise the if basically the one businessman basically asks the Indian government I want to know basically where we are paying the money then basically they can't basically give the account number directly to the businessman otherwise the businessman will say basically you will basically sit at home political people we will look after the countries so like this thing basically happens but they exactly basically they ask they can basically ask basically how the things are working, how basically the user controls basically are connected with the human needs. For example, text box is basically generating more than 1 lakh human needs. That is the vegetables, petrols, fruits. Combo box basically is there because these everything are the property of software company owners basically. So here basically this topic basically stop, we are stopping here. So the topic basically is connected again to the same thing basically the investment basically 1,000 crore money basically Indian government basically got they paid to the certain level of bank account and they that bank account basically is connected with the World Bank or basically the it might possible it might be connected with the Switzerland bank also basically. So here basically not we are not going to the deep basically otherwise basically 1% will by Indian government basically are telling that we basically are taking money from the other countries and we basically are getting the money like this lots of people will say that basically why you are basically telling this to us basically but India country is also paying certain level of money to the uh, certain level of people and India is also basically taking the money because they have created the certain level of countries so like this basically it's a huge chain basically of the investment basically so that also basically we are going to discuss in next video live session. So here basically we are signing off for today. That date is basically 17th January 2025 and the time is 8:37. So thank you for watching this video.